this is like out of character or whatever. I just wanted to show you my setup. Basically, this is my tripod. This is my phone tripod, and this is my ladder that I use to get up here. And I just have my script literally taped to it. It's not fun. And then here's all the script. There's all of it, and there's my coffee. That's the thing that got me through everything. Okay, goodbye. Hello everyone, my name is Gracie Del Rosario, and welcome back to another video that I made with 3 cups of coffee and a dream. 'Cause 'tis the season. Anyways, this video is a little bit different because this is actually a final project meant for one of my classes. A class all about codes and ciphers. A class that you can take here at the university that I go to. University of Oregon. Yeah, go Ducks. The whole concepts of ciphers and decrypting and deciphering them is all interesting, but in my opinion, the real diamonds in the rough here are the people behind the codes and the ciphers. You'll definitely hear names like Alan Turing and Elizabeth Friedman come up, but there are plenty of names and groups that don't get nearly enough spotlight for this secretive art. One such name would be Genevieve Young Hitt, a woman among a pool of other female groundbreaking cryptographers, such as Agnes Meyer Driscoll, Genevieve I'm gonna offend somebody here and I'm very sorry, Grotan Feinstein, Elizabeth Friedman, Grace Murray Hopper, Juanita Moody, on Cara Christie, and so many more that I'll just put their names scrolling right here. I just want to focus primarily on Genevieve, mainly because there really just wasn't enough of her online. It was mainly just like the 5 same sources and pictures of her. So this is where this video comes in. There's quite a bit to unpack here, so we'll break it down into sections, which the time codes will be displayed somewhere here, maybe on my face just because I'm that funny. I'm editing this at 10 p.m. the night before it's due, aren't I? Funny enough, I'm actually starting this at like Monday on 12 a.m. so I don't know if that's better or worse, to be honest. This is due on a Tuesday night. We'll see. Without further ado, let's get started! Yay, buckle up! So, Miss Genevieve Young Hitt was born May 29th, 1885 in LaGrange, Texas, and was raised in San Antonio as the second child and oldest girl out of 4 kids. Unlike many cryptographers, Genevieve never pursued college or higher education, but she was known to have a broad education, with her worst subject, oddly enough, being mathematics. A woman after my own heart. She officially finished her schooling in 1903, and the next couple of years saw her partying, dancing, being a skilled bridge player, and playing card games often expected from, and I quote, young women of good breeding and of the privileged class of San Antonio society. Their words, not mine. I don't even know what that means. She was often referred to as a strong-minded and independent individual who often joked about being a lazy Southern girl. Again, a woman after my own heart. It wasn't until late 1910 that she met her soon-to-be husband, Captain Parker Hitt, during his time at Fort Sam Houston in the 22nd Infantry, commanding a machine gun platoon. That's a mouthful. They wed the next year in July of 1911 and soon had 1 daughter in the next couple of years, Mary Louise. Now, as for the cryptography part of Genevieve's life, there's no really records as to how she got involved so deeply into cryptography from the get-go, but it's to believed that her constant collaboration with her husband played a huge role in her career. So much so that she's been credited with assisting, compiling, and preparing Parker's seminal work, Manual for the Solution of Military Ciphers, which was published by the Army in 1916. Now, that's only a minuscule fraction of what Genevieve accomplished during her time, and if these 14 pages of the script that I painstakingly wrote, and I could have just done an essay over one section tells you anything, she accomplished quite a lot, just for being a woman in the military with no cryptanalysis background to back her up. as I stated and shown you, this will arguably be the longest section of the video, so I hope you have caffeine, popcorn, or really anything to get you through this, because man, this one was busy, and I had to find a way to stop myself from literally making this as long as it needed to be. But here we go. Also, there will be quite a bit of sidetracking as well from Genevieve herself, but don't worry, everything's connected, I swear. So yeah. So nearly right after their marriage, Parker and Genevieve collaborated quite often in the military. Of course, we already mentioned Genevieve's input into her husband's manual, but in terms of actual ciphers and codes, her expertise has been notably recorded alongside the M138 Cipher device. Now this will be a far more expedited version of the M138 Cipher because this video's focus is initially on Genevieve herself. So if you want a more detailed explanation, please go to Cryptography for Everybody's video. Link will be in the description down below. That sounds like me being an actual YouTuber. Wow. But the cipher itself is a strip cipher encased in a metal frame with either metal or paper strips used for arranging a code. And it was actually created by Captain Parker Hitt himself in 1916. Each of the strips contains 2 times the same permuted alphabet and is assigned a unique number. In order to encrypt the plain text, the strips are shifted about within the frame so that the plain text is aligned and visible against one column. The key to this being a tricky cipher lies within the variety and the order of strips and the offset between plain and ciphertext. To decrypt, the strips must align together so that the ciphertext is visible within one column. I still hope I have your attention. If all goes according to plan and the ciphertext is arranged correctly, the deciphered text should be readable in another row. And with that out of the way, where were we? Right, Genevieve. Yeah, and her accolades. A noteworthy part of her work that she's been credited to belongs to Pershing's punitive expedition in 1916, which has been referred to as the Ponchoville expedition as well. Stationed at Fort Sill, Oklahoma alongside Parker, the Army tasked the both of them to analyze and decrypt intercepted Mexican government messages. To make it clear, by the way, Parker commanded Company H of the 19th Infantry during the punitive expedition as Captain Hitt. Again, a mouthful. Genevieve, on the other hand, reportedly assisted on a volunteer basis to decode these possibly lethal codes. Like, she had the clear option of not participating at all in a business that is top secretive and possibly life-threatening. But she decided to go, why not? Not actually, but you get what I mean. But anyways, with her name being associated alongside the expedition, this would have likely made her the very first cryptologist woman to serve in the US government. Pretty cool. Flash forward another year and, oh, whoops, World War I started. When the US was briefed on deciding how to approach the war, cryptology obviously made its way into the conversation, as it was at that time the primary way of messaging a broad army securely back then. 3 names popped up when it came to cryptography, and these 3 were kind of considered the quote-unquote pros of this field at the time. Lieutenant Joseph Marbog, Lieutenant Frank Mormon, and Captain Parker Hitt. Captain Parker was specifically sought out by Colonel Ralph Van Dam. There's a lot of complicated names here. Chief of the Military Intelligence Section, as he was always in contact with Hitt regarding his skills and his desire to have him involved in the military intelligence. Well, he got his wish, because on May 12th, Hitt was informed that he was to be relocated on May 28th to duty in the office of the Chief of Staff in Washington and to serve specifically under General John Pershing's staff as assistant to the Chief Signal Officer, which would eventually land him in England. Why are military titles so long? Oh my god. Where was I? Anyways, what makes this quote-unquote better Van de Man had the absolute guts to tell Genevieve that he was, and I quote, he was exceedingly sorry and disgusted that General Pershing succeeded in stealing Captain Hitt from us. As if he wasn't the one who wanted this in the first place. Okay, I see how it is. Anyways, before his relocation, Parker had arranged for Genevieve to move to Fort Sam Houston, Texas in early July of the same year, much closer to her family. There, she basically had two options. Be the stereotypical army spouse that cleans, cooks, and waits for her dashing husband to come back from the war at some point. Or to continue and pursue her work as a cryptanalysis. I'll give you a hint. This video would be a lot more shorter if she took the first option. Whilst Parker was away at some place, wherever, I don't even know anymore. This video is about Genevieve, not him. Alright, we're gonna stop talking about Parker now. He constantly wrote back to her and directly recommended her to Van de Man. God, he has such a hard name to read. If he ever required further assistance in cryptography. But before she made her way back to Texas, Genevieve traveled to Riverbank Laboratories in Illinois in place of Parker in early June of 1917, so about a month prior to Texas, to undergo cryptography training. In Riverbank, Genevieve was actually able to meet William Friedman, the husband to one of the most iconic female cryptographers, Elizabeth Friedman. Friedman has stated he remembered Genevieve's visits well because this is when he actually started to learn Captain Hitt's M138 cipher, and specifically noting that he won a box of chocolates for his wife when he solved a message created by Genevieve. That ain't love, I don't know what is. It was said that Friedman's solution was greatly attributed to Genevieve not being quote-unquote wise to the quirks of inexperienced cryptographer clerks, which I guess was a compliment. I don't know. Although she was being complimented by some of the best in the business at this point in her very short career, there were some Debbie Downers like, quote, Colonel George Fabian, I don't know why his title was in quotes when I looked it up, who was basically like, are we sure? Really? His main argument when complaining to Van de Man would be Genevieve's lack of skill explaining her own husband's manual regarding the cipher, and was requesting that Lieutenant Frank Morman, remember that guy, should have been sent to Riverbank instead. Although Van de Man couldn't personally defend Genevieve's cipher skills, he told Fabian that she was clearly not on the same level of expertise as Captain Hitt, and despite having acceptable training and a strong desire to work, she was only viewed as a quote-unquote talented amateur. After Riverbank, Genevieve made her way back to Fort Sam Houston as her permanent place of residence in Texas in July. There she sent a pretty straightforward letter to Van de Man offering her cryptography skill set, whereas she stated, Parker rather overestimates my ability along these lines, but there are times when I have been quote-unquote lucky. That's one way to help the war, I guess. Thankfully, though, Genevieve saw a quick response on July 18th from Van de Man himself and was basically like, okay, I'll think about it. He still acknowledges her skills, but he'll just reach out when he needs it, basically. And to be honest, it doesn't take that long. There aren't official records as to whether or not Van de Man took on Genevieve's specific offer, but by August 1st, Genevieve had cipher messages that came from the Southern Department sent to her home on a routine basis for her to crack and decipher. Some of the first few examples of these ciphers had written notes attached labeled for Mrs. Hitt on them, but by the end of the month they had a typewritten note on the messages themselves that stated, to Mrs. Parker Hitt, Infantry Post, Fort Sam Houston, basically making things official. Things were so official, in fact, that in an outgoing letter, Genevieve wrote, "Here we are, Parker and I, spending the best years of our lives fighting the damned Huns." The amount of official work she did for the Southern Department was only recorded to be until October 1917, which many would assume would have been the end of her journey. Oddly short, but still pretty plentiful. However, there is still reason to believe that she didn't stop, even if it was outside of the department. There have been several documents in circulation that have her handwriting clearly on it, and to add, Genevieve wrote to her mother-in-law on October 27, 1917, stating, "I am still working for the department on ciphers, but there is no salary attached to it. It is not worth a paycheck." Yes, you heard that right. No paycheck. She was decrypting and deciphering government-level ciphers for free. No money, no nothing, not anything. No paycheck. This obviously would be blasphemous in this day and age, especially for how long Genevieve did it for. Like, it was literally like half a year that she just did this for free. But thankfully, that would change because on April 23rd, 1918, she would be appointed as the leading cryptographer for the code work for the Southern Department's intelligence officer, Robert L. Barnes, which means she finally gets paid. A salary of $1,000 per year, which is roughly about $17,686 in 2022. Which isn't bad if you consider the economy in the 1920s. At least I don't think it is. I don't know. Anyways, as for how she landed the position, Barnes stated she did not seek this position but was requested by me to accept same, which she did purely from patriotic motives. Which basically translated to, money wasn't the first thing to consider. Anyways, Genevieve felt honored, as she should, to be tasked with the most, quote-unquote, the most secret affairs in the Army code book. She was specifically labeled as a code clerk and a cryptographer that worked 5.5 days a week, which basically guaranteed overtime. But at the very end of the day, she was just relieved to be, quote-unquote, doing her bit and having another man serve at the front lines. Take that line as you will. As World War I persisted, Genevieve's workload only grew in size and her patience was getting thinner. As she wrote numerous times to her mother-in-law, "All this seems so funny to me. At times I have to laugh. It is also foreign to my training, to my family's old-fashioned notions about what and where a woman's place in this world is, etc. Yet none of these things seem to shock the family now. I suppose it is the war. This is a man-sized job, but I seem to be getting away with it and I'm going to see it through." But then she wrote to her again, "My job is getting on my nerves. It is such an intense one, if you can understand what I mean. And it is so hard on my eyes. The atmosphere of this office is not what I have lived in all my life, and I do not think it has improved my disposition at all. Seriously, I have no intention of letting this work hurt my health in any way." And then, on November 8th, 4 days after the previous passage, she wrote, "I am so tired. I always am at 4 o'clock. I feel now that I can quit this job without being a slacker if this war is really to be over." And then finally, on November 12th, "Our office is practically dead, and I won't be needed here for very much longer, I am sure. I am so tired, I will gladly quit." And quit she did. Sort of. The last known work memo of Genevieve was a note from Major Barnes, who was transferred to the War Department's office of the Chief of Staff in Washington, on how many code books he was responsible for and precisely where those books were. So not even about Genevieve herself, just a question that he felt like Genevieve would know. After that, there was never really any permanent records of her taking up cryptography again after the Southern Department. She did become an abstractor for the Bureau of Investigation, or the BOI, at a salary of $1,200 per year on April 20th, 1920, but that was short-lived as she resigned on July 5th in the same year. Other future projects would include a patent for an illuminating device for dial telephones in 1930, but unfortunately there was no evidence of the actual product seeing the light under her name. Later on, she would co-author a book alongside her husband, remember him, titled The ABC of Secret Writing, which was, you guessed right, a book all about codes and ciphers. The last recorded attempt of paid work by Genevieve came right back from the Bureau of Investigation in 1940, where she once again offered her skill set if the need ever arose, just like how she did all those years ago with Van de Nam. She would later then pass away on February 6, 1963, with her ashes spread across the backyard of her beloved Virginian home, per her daughter Mary Louise's request. Okay, I still hope I have your attention because that was like a information dump, and I'm sorry, there was just a lot of her accolades to talk about and all that stuff. But anyway, Genevieve's career, although pretty short compared to others in the cryptography world, was still pretty significant, as it places her among a small group of American female cryptographer pioneers. And although she's not talked about as often as the likes of, again, Elizabeth Friedman, it's actually very likely she inspired someone very close to her to undergo the work she did at her prime. And that someone would be none other than her own daughter, Mary Louise, who underwent cryptography work in World War II. It's a full circle. Everything comes back. Hello. Besides that, the fact that she didn't have any higher education, unlike any other woman, and quite literally, quote unquote, accidentally became a cryptographer, her patriotism and the drive to face the challenging ciphers are really what made her stand out. To end this section, I'll just read another letter to her mother-in-law where she states, right here, every woman ought to be compelled to do some kind of work for her living for at least 3 months of her life. Then she would go through the world just being a little bit kinder. Sounds as if I was going to write an article for the Ladies' Home Journal, doesn't it? And that is it. We're done. My phone is at 10% and begging for help at this rate. I hope you enjoyed this very condensed version of Genevieve Young Hitt. Obviously, I will leave all my sources down below, and I do encourage you to read up more about her. Her life is very interesting, considering she was kind of known as the accidental cryptographer. It's just interesting as well because a lot of the sources just circulated back to other things and other people, like the M138 Cipher. A lot of it circled back to Parker Hitt, like, oh my god, you can't talk about Genevieve without Parker Hitt, basically. And a lot of the names and titles in this video were very hard to read, so I hope I did them justice. It's been 100 years, alright? I don't know anymore, man. It's been 100 years since this all happened. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope this was informative to some point, and I should really go charge my phone and work on this. This is ridiculous. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you especially to Professor Corinne for letting me do this, for approving of this little idea that I had for my final. And I hope that you found this, again, informative to whoever finds this on their YouTube recommended for some reason. I don't know. I'll see you later. Bye-bye. Woo! Wee!